Thank you for joining us. This is Live with Miami's Community News. I'm Michael Miller. Our special guest is Mark Merwitzer, the Vice Mayor of the Village of Palmetto Bay and the youngest. You were 24 when you were elected recently. That's extraordinary because it really says that people believe in you in spite of your young age. So congratulations on getting people to believe in you and into the future of Palmetto Bay. So we have a lot of subjects. The most recent one has been one of your colleagues on the dais has been sent out approximately 5-minute Facebook posting video, and it's all about you. So why don't you let's do the long and the short of it now. Tell us what it's about and what it means to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, Michael, thank you so much for having me on this Tuesday morning. I'm incredibly grateful for your platform and also for the fact that we've had many conversations in the past, and I hope to continue to have more of these in the future as well. So what I'll tell you about the oath is it's just highly unfortunate, this whole situation. A couple months ago, I was duly sworn in front of our village clerk, who is a notary, went through all the proper processes. Not only was that confirmed by our village attorney on numerous occasions now, but we unfortunately now have had to spend $6,000, Michael, on an independent counsel to tell us what we already knew, which is that I was duly sworn in, and today, sitting in your chair, I'm your Vice Mayor of Palmetto Bay. I find this whole thing, for lack of a better term, repugnant, because the voters of Palmetto Bay elected me. As you said, they had faith in me, and they continue to have faith in me. And we have a council member who is refusing to accept the fact that every meeting I'll be sitting on that dais a couple seats down from him.
So you think it's because you got elected, not because you didn't do what he perceived as being an improper swearing in?
Oh, absolutely. If you look at his own written memos, he has said time and time again that my predecessor is still the vice mayor, which to me is not just insulting to me, but it's insulting to the over 6,000 voters who put me in this position today, and to the whole concept of what it is to have a local government.
Yes. So we're going to get on to something that's a little bit easier to have a conversation about. Let's talk about the Tanglewood property, where they're behind a group of homes that are alongside a canal.
Yes.
The village, in all its wisdom, I don't want to say flip-flop, but that was the feeling, voted to, well, why don't you tell us what the city council voted on?
Sure. So what I'll tell you is that there's a lot of discussion about whether or not we should have a park. To me, it was about the disgusting and horrific things that I've learned that our village has been doing on this property, and whether or not we should have faith in our village government and to act with accountability and transparency.
So before you go into a description, these are homes that are alongside, they back up to a canal.
Absolutely.
And there's how many feet of public property is there?
I mean, I don't really want to get into specifics of the property, because to me that's completely immaterial. It was about our conduct around this application, about what we were actually doing with these residents, and what our position has been on this, both in public as a council and also privately behind the scenes, what we've been doing, and exactly why I had to make the tough call as a vice mayor to put forward that resolution to terminate that park.
Okay. So just to make it clear, there are a group of homes that back up to a canal.
Yes.
The village said there's some public property that's behind their homes and up to the canal that was it was going to become a public park. So it's,
no, it wasn't. So originally, and this is, I really don't want to get into timelines, but what I'll tell you is that across the street on 77th Avenue, the neighbors in 2018 put in an application to buy similar land. It's called surplus land, Michael.
Yes.
Where the Dade County Internal Services Department, which is the department that oversees all of all the county's real estate, went to every single department across Miami-Dade County and went, hey, do you want this land? Do you want this land? Do you want this land? And not a single county department found any use for this public land. And the Internal Services Department came to the conclusion that the best thing to do for this land was to no longer keep it on the books, because taxpayers continuously have to maintain it. So they allowed this group of residents to put in an application and proceed with trying to acquire this land. When our residents in the village of Palmetto Bay put in this application, there was no discussion about turning that land into a park, aside from a resolution that came out like several years ago, and that was moot by that point. It was not in any of our long-term plans. It was not in anything other than a dream. And what happened was The residents put in the application, and then the village quickly turned around and retroactively added it to our parks master plan, and then continued to say, oh, we always wanted this to be a park. We always wanted to do this. And then continuously fought the neighbors tooth and nail, did not consult them on any of their decisions to move forward with turning this into a park. What eventually happened is, I'll get to, like, it's a really long story because this played out over the course of 2 years before I joined this dais, but I'd like to talk about my involvement with it and also just in general what happened here. About a year ago now, government moves really slowly. The county came to the conclusion, okay, we're going to take the side of the residents and make it so that because they were first in line and because they had this application in long before the village did, we're okay with selling them the land. That was the decision of our county commissioner and also the unanimous decision at the time of the county infrastructure committee. It then went to a second vote, which, as you know, to the county. So it went from a panel, which is a handful of commissioners, to then the whole county commission. And if that whole county commission agreed to sell that land, it would have been over, and we would not have to be discussing this. It would have been a done issue for a long time. What happened was, at the 11th hour, literally speaking, at the 11th hour before the vote happened, the village sent what we internally characterized as a, quote, poison pen letter. For those who are not familiar with the term poison pen, it just means full of deceit and also with ill will.
So this is after the first vote by the county.
Yes.
It was going to go to the second vote.
Yes.
And a minute before, or the day or two, three before.
A couple hours
before, the village says, hey, we don't want that. We want it.
No, they didn't just say that. They alleged illegalities, and they sent a whole letter to the Inspector General of Miami-Dade County saying that the county didn't follow their procedure. The county attorneys confirmed that all the proper procedures were followed, and the whole thing just basically blew up during that meeting because of that venomous letter. That, by the way, that's what the village is characterizing it as.
And that letter that was sent, that was not too long ago.
That was about a year ago now. It's been a while.
Letter? Wow.
So this whole process that we're discussing right now happened about a year ago.
Okay.
And government moves really slowly. But what had happened there, and I was with the residents on that from the beginning, before I even decided to run for vice mayor, by the way. I've always been active in our community on these sorts of issues, and I was just appalled when I learned about that. None of this was really was really presented to the public until our county commissioner showed what happened to the public in a very interesting video. But what I'll just share is what the ultimate result of that was that we were told by the county commission, Michael, to go to the residents and negotiate with us in good faith. So it was supposed to be
residents for you or them to negotiate with each other
in good faith.
To do what?
What the terminology they used was, quote, split the baby.
Okay.
Which I don't know if you know, but that's from a biblical term where if you split the baby, you literally, like, you're kind of killing it.
Yes.
But we, unfortunately, in trying to, quote unquote, negotiate, instead of negotiating in good faith with the residents, and instead of working side by side with the people who entrusted us to work with them on this, we turned around and went to a lobbyist, Jorge Luis Lopez, and over the course of the next couple of months, spent over $132,000 on lobbying against these residents.
So that the city could have the land to do something with.
Yes. And when I tell you that our procurement code, I don't want to get into the weeds as to what exactly our code says, because, like, if I talked about procurement code, I think you'd probably lose your entire audience here.
And this entire property, from what I understand, is about 3 acres spread over a long area.
Yeah. Okay. But what I'll tell you is here's what happened, Michael. After this decision was made by the county, instead of negotiating in good faith with the residents, we turned around to Jorge Luis Lopez, which is a very high-powered lobbying firm for the viewers watching, and then decided that the best course of action was to bypass all of our procurement code, in my view, and illegally hire this guy, mark this contract with this lobbyist, it's now public record because I asked for it, as confidential. And in that contract, it said things like stay ahead of the approval process and, quote, monitor opposition activities. We spent $132,000 on monitoring opposition activities. Last I checked, we're a democracy. We are not communist Cuba. We're not some kind of country where we're a dictatorship.
And they're about how many residents? Was it about 10?
More. Like trying to buy the land, or who are opposed to it? Like
they wanted to buy the land, more or less.
Well, it was one person on the technical front who
Yes.
put in the application, but it was a group of residents in that area. It was roughly 10 or 15 that were going to split it amongst themselves after the transaction.
And what was the lobbyist supposed to do? What did the city, the people that approved it, want him to do?
You would have to ask them. I mean, but I can see the contract, and it said things like monitor opposition activities, stay ahead of the approvals process, and try and get this park at all costs for the village. And look, I think we can have a genuine conversation about whether or not we should have more parks. I'm strongly on the side we should always try and have more parks in the village of Palmetto Bay. But my personal principle is that we can always build parks anywhere else in the village of Palmetto Bay, Michael. We can never rebuild trust with residents. So I had to make that tough call once I was elected to get some information as to what really happened here. And when I saw that information, I had to make the tough call of whether or not we should decide to continue with this application. And I think the honorable thing to do was to acknowledge our faults as a village and then give this land to the people who requested it.
There was a vote. When was that vote?
This was in January.
Okay. Essentially a month and a half ago.
Roughly, yes.
So it came to vote on. What was the council going to vote on to continue?
To absent itself from this application. We're no longer involved in this. That's
after spending the $100,000. Right?
After spending over $132,000 on, in my view, an illegal lobbyist contract.
And so, what caused the commission, the council, to say all of a sudden, okay, forget the 132. We're going to give up. We're going to let the neighbors get it. What caused that to occur?
It's always been a 3-2 issue. What had happened previously was the district commissioner, my colleague Patrick Fiore, and also Councilwoman Marsha Matson have always been on the side of the residents no matter what throughout this entire process. And then obviously my predecessor was that third vote with Councilman Cody, the mayor, and the vice mayor were the three. Obviously with me in there now, the vote flipped to now the other side. And that's why we basically did the about face.
So the city said, all right, the people voted, it's over, you guys can proceed.
Unfortunately not. And this is what's bothering me about this application as well in our village's stance, is even after we've withdrawn from this application, and even after we have no stake in this land, what we continue to see is continued interference on this application. Someone sent out recently what is known in the business as a push-pull, insinuating the fact that this might be sold to private developers. Our residents are not developers. There is never going to be any kind of real estate development under power lines. And unfortunately, someone spent a ton of money probably to send out a Survey Monkey push poll to a bunch of residents. And then what happened was we had a council member turn around to the Board of County Commissioners and the chairwoman of the County Infrastructure Committee and say that because of this poll, you have to make this land permanently open and not sell this land to residents, which just adds fuel to the fire of what I'm trying to say, which is we've never negotiated in good faith with our residents. And had we done that, we wouldn't be in this position in the first place where we're now trying to interfere with this application now. So
somebody hired these folks to do this poll to use as evidence so they could go and try to get the county, because they own it, to cancel what they thought they were going to do and giving it to the homeowners.
Correct.
Or selling it to the homeowners.
After the village's official position is, we don't want this land. So it's just so unfortunate that the village is continuing, and we have elected officials in the village continuing to attempt to interfere with this application.
So do you think somebody on the city council created or made that poll occur?
I can only guess, but I just found it odd that someone on the city council had the results of that poll. So, and they were citing specific numbers from that poll.
But the village of Palmetto Bay already voted on it, which was we're going to let the neighbors deal with the county because it was county land. Let them deal with it. They're going to pay for it, whatever it is. All right. So now so now whoever it is wants to undo that.
Yeah. By the way, that's Councilman Cody as well, the same guy who's going after me for my oath. So it's unfortunate that that's the position that we're in, and I really just find it distasteful at best and just awful at worst that this is how we're treating our residents.
So is there anything that the city right now is going to do, or does the city look at it and say, listen, it's out of our hands, we don't want it, whatever the county wants to do, go for it?
Our official position is we do not have a pending application on Tanglewood.
Okay. All right. We're done with that one?
Yes.
Okay, next. I understand you're bringing back the Neighborhood Protection Committee. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I ran on this promise. I've knocked on over 6,000 doors telling people that one of my top priorities is bringing back something called the Neighborhood Protection Committee. It was a resident-driven panel to give input to the council on issues that matter to people, like overdevelopment, traffic, noise pollution from cars, air quality, you name it. This was something that provided tangible recommendations to the village council. Last time it was a panel, it recommended things such as a 5-story height limit up and down US 1, and it recommended a whole host of other things that protected our residents' quality of life. Unfortunately, the previous administration did away with that committee, and I'm hoping that at the next meeting on March 3rd, my resolution to bring it back will pass. I am hoping I have the votes because the residents, I don't see anyone wanting to vote against something like the Neighborhood Protection Committee, unfortunately, so we'll see how it goes, but I'm confident that we're going to have this panel back, and I'm really excited that residents will be in the driver's seat now of the future of the developments in Palmetto Bay.
And what specifically could the supporters on the council do so that they can make sure there are enough people that want to serve?
Well, I would say that Palmetto Bay is very fortunate to have a lot of talent within our community.
Mm-hmm.
There's plenty of people who I'm sure would like to serve on this sort of thing. I get emails and calls almost every single day about development issues, about traffic issues. And by the way, if you also want to reach out to me about development or traffic issues, my phone number is 786-309-6743. But the point is, what I'll tell you is that there are people who are highly engaged on these issues, who want to have a voice. They unfortunately had their voice taken away from them a couple years ago. I ran on bringing them back their voice, and I'm hoping that this item will pass.
Wonderful. Let's talk about, I understand that a journalist has been inquiring to all the cities throughout Miami-Dade County. There's 34 cities plus the county.
Yes.
Right? And so the Village of Palmetto Bay did something special. So why don't you tell us about that?
Out of all of the other municipalities in Miami-Dade County, I believe there's 34, yes? Okay. Yeah, out of the other 34 municipalities in Palmetto Bay, I got an email from a journalist last week who said that Palmetto Bay was the only municipality out of the rest of them who did not share information with this journalist about the elected officials' salary and benefits
Public
package.
information.
It's public information. And all the other administrations across Dade County shared this. We were the only one. And I don't know what the motivation was or if it was just an oversight. But what I'll tell you is I found the timing of that lack of sharing information interesting because last month I received an email from the village manager saying that we're now allowed to get a $400 a month car allowance for every council member on the dais. And I was shocked that that's even going to be happening. It doesn't require a vote apparently because the expenditure for that is under $25,000. It's just under that threshold. There's 5 of us, $500 a month times 12 times 5 is just under $25,000, unfortunately. And I was just amazed. And I think that when we might be having to have very difficult conversations about our budget next year, like every other county or municipality, I find that the conversation about raising benefits for our elected officials is just not what we should be doing. I was elected to serve the people, not enrich myself with benefits from taxpayers. And I don't know if that information was shared with that journalist, so I took the initiative to forward that to him. So hopefully people will be aware of that, but it's just so unfortunate that out of the 34 other municipalities, we're not being transparent. I'm hoping part of the reason why I wanted to come on your show is so that I can help bring back that transparency and let people know that we're now subject to this $400 a month car allowance, which, by the way, I'm not going to take a dime from that.
So as far as transparency, you're saying that the city was not transparent with this report with public information. And in the same breath, we're talking about what's happening with the property at Tanglewood, right? It seems to be there's something similar in that mindset that's going on and fighting the neighbors over there and then creating a huge expense, $132,000, which went nowhere, except for what it did show, all right, these two things. The city's not open enough and they're not transparent enough. We see that. And we know whatever it is, people should be able to look at it without judgment. Here's the information, do what you want with it.
Yeah.
And, we've been in this arena for a long time. Most of the cities are immediate with information because they know that it's not worth it for them to have to go through the grief. And unfortunately, now this journalist is now sharing that with his other colleagues from different media. They're going, let me tell you what's going down at Palmetto Bay. Let me tell you,
Yeah.
you want to piss off a group of people? Just do that, all right? And we did, by the way, have a field day when the cities were first started. We would used to print the check registries. It was a blast. It was so much fun because we believe in this transparency.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're going to get on to now Marvin Dunn. Let's talk about Marvin. Tell us who he is, first of all.
Yeah, so he's a historian. Tonight, the village is hosting an official event with him about Black History. It's February's Black History Month. We're all hosting the events on behalf of our Village Education Committee at Village Hall. The reason why I want to talk about this is that I'm worried about some of the confusion that has been happening around this event and a subsequent event. What has happened is Marvin is obviously very active in the community. He's very vocal, and he has a history of activism and
for decades. I think probably, sorry, Marvin, 50 years, I think, plus.
Probably about twice as long as I've been alive.
There you go.
There you go. I have a lot of respect for him. I have a lot of respect for his perspective. I was just very worried about the fact that obviously tonight at Village Hall we're having this event, but a couple of days later, I've seen social media posts from him continuously post about how we want to have a rally at Village Hall on Sunday, a couple days after, and this just kind of came out of nowhere. And I really just want to make sure that the village is very clear with people that this event was planned for weeks, and that the subsequent rally against our Congresswoman Maria Salazar is a completely separate event and not sanctioned by the Village of Palmetto Bay, and is completely, like, as a nonpartisan body that is elected to represent the interest of our constituents. I'm really hoping that the village will put out a statement saying, hey, we're having this event tonight, but the future rally or protest that Marvin would like to have at Village Hall, by the way, as well, is a whole separate event. We're not a partisan body. We don't endorse the specific views of...
Do the people have to make an application to get a permit for that?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, at this
time... So he's done all that?
I mean, no, at this time, no application has been filed, which is part of my concern as well. I've held many rallies in Palmetto Bay. I've always kept the size under 30 to date, and this is a testament to how much of an activist Marvin is. There's been hundreds of shares and likes on the call for this protest at Village Hall, and it caught our village kind of off guard that we're having this rally on Sunday. I also just am concerned that it's sending the wrong message to our Congresswoman, who, by the way, supported us last year with a $200,000 contribution to our Veterans Park. And look, I don't want to get into national politics. I'm not elected to get into that. This is a nonpartisan position. What I'll tell you is I just really hope that we can send out a very strong statement saying, hey, one thing has nothing to do with the other. We're neutral on all national issues unless we have a council position on it. And I really think we need to be transparent with residents that one thing has nothing to do with the other, because obviously when they see this individual, we promoted this individual on numerous times on our social media with the village logo, and talking about this event for weeks, and then a couple of days later, also at Village Hall, there's another event.
That's not lost on the people that are going to be participating.
Well, I mean, we'll see. And I would like to, as a village, protect the fact that, again, we're an apolitical body in the sense that in the national level we don't get into any of those. Now you mentioned
the event that's going to happen there recently here in South Miami. You could go on to the city of South Miami's website. And there was a real big stink with the police over here recently when there was an event, and the event was at the end, the police came over, and people got a little testy. And City Hall was swarmed, different than what over there, about the treatment that they thought that they had received.
Sure.
All right. And I get it. All right. And it was really an interesting thing to be able to look at it. And I'm wondering if there's something that's underneath that's there that's brewing. So we're gonna find out in the next 6 months or a year if there's more things along that line. Let's talk about unfortunately there was a cyclist.
Yeah.
Was killed last week and a car ran into him. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so unfortunately a driver hit a cyclist on between 81st and 82nd Avenue, I believe it was, on 160th Street, which for those who are not familiar with Palmetto Bay's streets, I know a lot of people when they drive around, they mainly identify with landmarks more. This is a traffic circle just as soon as you leave Southwood. It's that traffic circle if you made it right outside of Southwood. So Unfortunately,
And this was somebody's uncle, father, sister, brother,
yes,
kids, got the whole
yeah,
thing, unfortunately.
correct. So I'll tell you what happened. Last week, I was scrolling on social media while I was in Tallahassee waiting for a meeting, as people my age do, and I saw
Oh,
on
yeah.
I saw on Facebook from the Village of Palmetto Bay a quote traffic alert that, hey, avoid the area on 160th and 82nd Avenue. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I see another random post a couple minutes later of, hey, someone was hit on a cyclist and is like on the ground, is what I saw on social media as well. So I was like, oh no, something really bad has just happened. What I then saw a couple of, like about 2 hours later, is another post from the Village of Palmetto Bay that said, quote, traffic alert, continue to avoid 82nd Avenue and 160th Street. Oh, and by the way, a cyclist died, which to me,
They take away the impact of what that really means. And
yeah,
I remember
someone
seeing
died.
I remember seeing those like, oh, there was a car accident, okay, or somebody's
Yeah.
truck is stuck or something.
Someone died, Michael.
Yeah.
And the message to residents is traffic alert.
Yes. There is that empathy button that is missing in that type of reporting when you see that, right? Clearly. I'm not drawing connection between the Tanglewood fiasco, which it is, and that we're not going to give the journalists the information, but there is a connection in behavior that, as an observer, to not a participant,
Yeah.
as an observer, there's some button that's not being pushed.
So not only, so I'm also right now, unfortunately, an observer to this, which is really unfortunate. So last week, I sent to the administration an information request. Hey, can you please share with me the details around what happened with this crash? People have wanted to know, and I continue to get messages asking, "Hey, what happened, Mark? Like, what happened here?" And I do not want to be a vice mayor that ever, after this ghost bike goes up at this intersection, to ever have to place anywhere in Palmetto Bay another ghost bike. And what I'll tell you is how we have handled this so far, to me, is highly unfortunate. Right now, since Wednesday, there has not been any word from the Village of Palmetto Bay about what happened at that intersection, the cause of the crash, why there was according to anonymous post, a long response time. I'd like all this information myself because I need that information to make accurate decisions on the dais. And what's happened is, because we have this information vacuum, our residents are now relying on anonymous posts on social media to provide them information. You go to our Facebook pages like around Palmetto Bay, you will see anonymous posts providing more information than our village government. And that anonymous post apparently was someone who was at the scene, and I personally found it credible. And I really just feel horrible for that resident's experience. The whole point I'm trying to make is not about that post itself. It's about how we as a village have completely ceded all of the information to residents that they're asking for to people who are unable to put their name on it for, I don't know, like what the reason is, probably just because they don't want to reveal their identity and like they're concerned about people. But what I'll just share is, as a village government, it is our job to be transparent with people about what happened, what we're doing to address something, and what we're doing to make sure this never happens again. And none of this has happened so far.
Right. And you use the word transparent, and in these other examples, it's not been transparent.
Correct.
That's a bigger issue, which I am sure that you are going to tackle this as you are straight on, right? And congratulations again on making a difference over Palmetto Bay. Again, this is our Vice Mayor, Mark Merwitzer from the Village of Palmetto Bay. We're going to look right over the red camera, and you can sign us out over here.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for having me on, Michael. If you ever want to reach me, you can call me directly on my cell, 786-309-6743. Thank you so much.
Have a good day, folks.